Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today we have another guest, another great guest. As our subscribers know, often I share ideas and best practices for networking, but I also like to mix into the litany of shows guests, awesome people who share their story, answer some questions, and tell us what they're looking for to grow their professional lives. But before I jump into that, let me remind you, we're looking to add quality people to our stable of franchisees. This is a unique franchise opportunity in that it's geared for aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals to add on to what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else for a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week. Our franchisees operate our program. The rest of their week, they're doing something else. Accountants, attorneys, realtors, consultants, coaches of various kind. If you're interested, contact me. There's an email in the show notes, or you can use the one provided at the end of the podcast. Okay, our guest today, Felicia Slattery. I made sure I pronounced that correctly. I just read an article on pronouncing names, so I wanted to make sure I got it right. When we
it's Slattery.
What's that?
It's Slattery.
Slattery, I got it wrong? All right. Yeah. I have whatever. Anyhow, did I get Felicia right?
We're having fun already.
Yeah. Slattery. All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we're only going audio because I'm probably beat red right now with embarrassment. But anyhow.
It's okay. Call me anything. Just don't call me late for dinner.
That's right. Well, welcome. Felicia is an author, a professional speaker. The book I think we're really going to kind of touch on, which really delves right into networking, or it is networking. The name of her book is Kill the Elevator Speech. Mm-hmm. I'll chime in.
Okay.
Mispronounce my name. I don't care.
I don't know how bad I can screw up Frank, but
yeah.
Francis.
There you go.
So yeah, my Kill the Elevator Speech book is really all about what you do with your organization and AmSpirit. It's about helping people understand that developing relationships is far better than running around to 1,000 different networking meetings where you never get to know anybody. But it's really about two things that have been the secrets, so to speak, to my success. And I've run a very comfortable 6-figure business for the last, 5-6 years or so. And the two main things have been, number one, networking, and number two, public speaking. And the combination of those two kind of puts the whole thing on rocket fuel. And that's what Kill the Elevator Speech is really all about. It's about when you meet somebody, have a real connection with them. Don't memorize and verbally vomit, marketing words at them. Because the truth is, research shows they're not going to remember them anyway. People only remember 2 to 4 words about you and what you do. Other research has shown even when people are listening for information, they only remember 17% of the information that they're listening to when they're trying to get information. So, and in a networking situation, especially one where you're meeting a stranger and you're in a room full of strangers and people are just kind of shaking hands and what do you do? And what do you do? And what do you do? They're too focused often on themselves. I'm like, well, what am I going to say? And how am I going to answer this? And, oh, that guy over there looks good. And if I can leave here with 3 really solid leads tonight, it's going to be amazing. So they're not even listening. So all of the words that you spend all this time, putting together your quote elevator speech on. So don't even bother. They're going to remember 2 to 4 words. You give them those 2 to 4 words so that they know what you are, and they've got. There's some brain science involved in this. So, a lot of people think, Frank, you're around my age-ish. Do you remember in the 70s and 80s, especially the 80s, when the stay-at-home moms started to call themselves domestic engineers? You remember that?
Yeah.
right? Because they were trying to come up with like something fancy and something interesting and creative. Well, people are still doing that in the business world today. They're coming up with, I'm sure in your career meeting, so many people that you do with networking, like people call themselves all kinds of things, right? Yep. Well, the more creative, I'm using air quotes here, the more creative and unique you come up with a name for yourself, the less likely you are to be remembered. And the reason for that is people don't have neural pathways created for that term. So they hear this weird term and they don't know what it means exactly. And so they don't know where to put you in their brain. But when you say I'm a graphic designer, oh, okay, well, maybe someone who's not a graphic designer doesn't have a firm grasp on exactly everything that a graphic designer does. But they've heard of that job, they know what that is, and they go, oh, okay, I could put you over here in this side of my brain because maybe I'm working on another book and I need a book cover done, and I will file you in my brain for that. In fact, I met somebody yesterday. That's how she described herself. And I was like, fantastic, maybe I'll talk to her about doing a book cover. So, but had she come up with some other weird, creative name, I would have been like, I don't think I need that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, when I talk to people, and I always tell people, when you got to go to events. Well, you don't have to, but you have to network, and people are going to ask you what you do. Mm-hmm. I always tell them they need to be ready with something. But I do agree with what you're saying. I think people put too much effort into it. Like I've got to have this 30-second commercial that, at the end of 30-second commercial, somebody's breaking out a pen and, okay, where do I sign? Doesn't work that way. No.
And it doesn't even work because a lot of people who teach the elevator speech method, they're like, no, my dog gets excited about it because I do. The whole concept around that, the way that some people teach it is, well, you want to get people asking you questions. So the whole point around the way people who teach the elevator speech method, they want you to elicit somebody to ask you more questions or say, oh, tell me more about that. And even that, trying to manufacture a word, like a bunch of words that you say to elicit a specific response is actually the opposite of effective communication. Effective communication between two people is spontaneous. It's not planned. It's not a script. So know your 2 to 4 words. Spend some time thinking about what are the 2 to 4 words that you want the world to think of you as. Right? So for me, generally, I'll tell people public speaking expert. Right? So that's my 3 words. And sometimes I throw in author. Sometimes I throw in speaker, whatever. Sometimes I'll say public speaking and communication expert. So if you throw the and in, that's 5 words, but they can remember the and. Yeah. But like that's how I want people to remember me, so that when they're like, oh, I have to do a speech. What was that lady's name that I met? Let me see. She was a public speaking expert, something, right? And so they can flip through their cards because they'll remember they met somebody who does what I do. They're not likely to remember my name, but they are likely to remember they met somebody who does what I do when I share those 2 to 4 words. So that's really all you need to have prepared. And then here's the question that I want people to ask. Don't ask, what do you do? That's the networking equivalent of how are you? Right. And, you're at put it in a personal situation and, you're at a family reunion and, you ask your Aunt Bertha, how are you, Aunt Bertha? Oh, my bursitis is killing me with this rain. It's been awful. Like, okay, I didn't really need to know the whole thing. I was just wanting to say hi. Right. Well, that's what when you meet people at networking meetings and somebody says, what do you do? That's them saying, I don't know what other words to say. This is the acceptable way to open up a conversation. So I'm just going to ask this question and maybe see if we can't enter into a conversation together. So what happens when you ask that question is the people who have memorized this verbal vomity, like, oh, you feel like you need a shower afterwards sometimes, is they're ready for that question. What they're not ready for is a simple 5-word question, and it's called, how did you get started? How did you get started? When you ask that question, you trigger something. Again, this is another psychology thing, but you trigger something in their mind that reminds them of a time that they were happy. When you trigger them and you remind something of a time when they were happy and you say, I want to hear your story, they totally drop the memorized stuff And now they're really in a conversation with you, and they get animated and they get excited. To the level that person gets animated and excited, right? I mean, there's a lot of accountants out there who aren't going to be, waving their hands and up and down and jumping up and down, but they'll be happy remembering, oh yeah, I remember when I started my job, or, oh my gosh, I was so nervous about it, or whatever. But every person has a story. In fact, that's the name of my podcast and another one of my books. I have the How Did You Get Started show, because everybody in business has a story. So ask that question. You then sidestep, what do you do? And you can also ask people that question. I don't have to know your name. I don't have to know anything about you. You don't have to have a name badge on or anything. I can just say, so how are you today? Tell me, how did you get started doing the kind of work that you do that brought you here today?
Well, the interesting thing you're touching on, and I've talked about this in my non-interview podcasts, is that so often people think small talk is, I've got to be interesting, and it's no, you've got to be interested. And that's what you're really driving at, is here are the questions that you need to ask. Don't worry about your 30-second commercial. Just have, 3 or 4 words to say that kind of describe you. Mm-hmm. But it's really about kind of getting them talking and then kind of going from there. And I guess there's nothing wrong with delving into, well, what do you do? But just don't make it the first thing you say, I guess. Right. It's,
well, you could do that. Other questions that I have a list of questions in my book. But another one I like to ask is, what's your favorite thing about what you do?
Right.
And the reason if I was looking for, my friend Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver and Endless Referrals and a number of other books. Yep. One of the questions that Bob has, teaches people to ask, that I've long asked, is if I were looking for to help you, if I was talking to somebody, how would I know that I'm talking to a perfect referral for you? Right. Who would be that person? Because now you're asking the other person about themselves. And I like to ask kind of feel-good questions. Yep. Because when you ask questions that remind somebody of a happy time in their life, or ask them about their favorite part of what their work, or, who's your favorite kind of client to work with or customer to work with or whatever. People are flooded with endorphins, and right. Endorphins lead to positive feelings. And most people are not going to remember what you said. They are going to remember how you made them feel. And in a room of 25 or 50 or 100 or however many people are, in the networking room, right. They're going to remember you more than anybody else, because you flooded their body with these positive endorphins, and they just felt happy when they talked to you, and they're going to remember you in a positive light. So right. There you go.
No, I think that's all really powerful. I too have a list of questions. In Columbus, Ohio, I joke, because nobody's from Columbus. Everybody moved here for a reason. Not everybody, but if I give a speech in Columbus and ask the room who's not from here, 90% of the room hand will go up.
Right.
And so people say, well, what do you talk to people about? It's like, oh, it's so easy in Columbus, because you just get at where they're from. There's a story there. What brought you here? Right. And I'll joke with the audience. I'll say, well, it usually involves a woman, well, my wife's from here, or, something like that. Yeah. And a lot of times that's very true. But again, you're right. You just, small talk is so powerful, and kind of getting people comfortable. I mean, like you say, there's studies out there, and, it's chemical, it's biological, it's, yeah. But we do get caught up in these trying to piece together that perfect thing. Right. And I think we all, at least people who didn't start out reading your book, we all kind of go down that path and realize it's really hard, and it's not comfortable. Mm-hmm. And just having a conversation is comfortable and ends up working. And that's when we realize, oh, you know what? I don't need to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. The moment you realize there is no perfect way to start a conversation, right. Have a conversation, whatever, ask questions that are not yes or no questions that might make the other person feel good, right. To answer them, and you're good to go.
Well, when somebody asks me what I do, I'm always kind of taken back. It's like, okay, what's the agenda? Because it goes right to, yeah. It's like being at a bar.
Are you prospecting me right now?
Right. Well,
yeah.
this is kind of a terse analogy, but it's like being at a bar, when you're in college and a guy come up to you, hey, you ready to leave? It's like, I don't even know you.
Right.
Can I have your phone number? I don't even know you.
Right.
And so it just gets a little too personal too quickly. And I love just going to networking events and chatting with people. And I know a lot of people are really good with it, and you never really get into professional stuff. Let's develop a relationship. If we develop a relationship, all that stuff will come out later.
Yes.
Maybe at another event. Don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Are you familiar with Ryan Foland? You know who Ryan is?
No, I don't.
He's got a method out there. It's called the 1-3-1 method. And I did a podcast on it. I think that podcast is out. But it's very, as you talk, it's very, what you're saying totally kind of resonates with what he preaches. So you get a chance, you can look it up or listen to the episode I did. But it kind of breaks down that, hey, I'm a financial planner working with blah, 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 into 3 words. I help people avoid divorce. Well, how do you do that? Well, I help them with their finances, and, it kind of, so anyhow, listen to what he has to say. Good referrals. What people are listening? How could they help you?
Oh, great for me. So my best clients are people who are some kind of expert in their industry, and the industry has events where they have speakers, and they have been invited to speak, and they have been smart enough to say yes, even though they don't know what to do next.
Okay.
So, they're like, oh, yes, I'm going to speak at this thing. Now what? The now what is call Felicia.
Okay.
Because I help people put together what I call their signature speech that helps them market their business in front of a room full of their ideal potential clients. If they want to put together a book that goes with that speech, I help them do that. And then I also help them launch that book so that they could theoretically, hopefully get a little bestseller sticker tag to put on stuff. So
okay.
What I help people do.
How quickly could somebody turn around a book? Most of these, when somebody gets booked for a speaking engagement, hey, it's next month. That's probably not enough lead time to get a book out. Or
actually, we could get a book done in. So I'll just tell you this. I started a book on Memorial Day.
Okay.
And within 3 days, I had it pretty much done. I went on vacation for a week and didn't look at it, didn't think about it. And then a day after I got back from vacation, had to do one more thing on it. It was ready and for sale on Amazon. So 4 days.
Okay.
So and with somebody, and that's me by myself doing what I know how to do. When I'm working with somebody, we could have a book done in 30 days pretty easily. Okay. It really depends on really it's on my client's end. Sometimes they drag their feet on a couple of things I got to do, but I could do it in 14 days if they're on the ball. Like my team moves fast. So, and I have a few ways to make that happen. They're not going to sit down and write every single word from scratch. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I got to get this whole book done in 2 weeks. That's not what it's going to be. I actually interview people. That's what I do. And then that interview and we turn that into a book, and it's a really cool way to have a book and be able to either give it away or sell it or whatever and just boost your authority.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because I think when I've written books, and for me it was an ordeal. I probably wrote for 18 months. But it was maybe a different type of book than what you're going to put out in 14 days.
Exactly.
Somebody's not going to be okay, War and Peace, here it is, it's done 14 days later. But it will be a book that they can, that centers on them and their expertise.
Yes.
And I think it's good that people know that, oh my God, I'm lined up to speak in October. I would love to I'd love to have things that I could hand out. I would love to have a book. I would love to look like the other people who are going to be there at the event, or the other speakers, or the other speakers I've seen.
Or even be better, be the best.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's what I like to do, is I like to coach my people. I'm a competitive person. So I'm like I used to compete in public speaking when I was in college. So, and our team was #1 in the nation. So I pat myself on my own back. But
are you give a shout out to your college or university?
Bradley University, Peoria, Illinois. Bradley's
go.
won more national championships in public speaking than any school has won in any activity. Pick like Duke in basketball, or UT, University of Tennessee, in women's basketball, or pick a college football dynasty, Alabama right now. Bradley University's won more national championships in public speaking than any school in anything, anywhere, ever.
All right.
I got to be part of that legacy. It was awesome. So anyway, I'm a super competitive person. And so I like my people to feel like they're going to be the best in the room. Right. So they leave, with all their slides totally done. They leave with their handouts, their order form if they're going to be selling something. If they want to have their book done, great. We get that done on time. So, and they feel super comfortable and confident, because as a former college professor of public speaking, I know what people feel like when they are uncomfortable putting together a presentation and then having to deliver it. And so the methods that I use to help them put it together, actually, I sneakily make them practice, but they don't even know it.
Okay. There you go. There you go.
So anyway, those are my ideal people.
All right. Well, here's even a better question, as we're running short on time and trying to wrap this up. But what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Oh goodness, I could be found everywhere. Okay. I am at Felicia Slattery, FELICIAS, like Sam, LATTERY, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, Pinterest, wherever, and FeliciaSlattery.com. And if you're interested in this, you can go to killtheelevatorSpeech.com. I've got some free goodies. You can read the introduction and the first chapter right there for free. So go killtheelevatorSpeech.com. And that's my story.
Well, as you and I talk post-production, if you get me a link, I will put it in the show notes that people can, what could somebody link to? Would that link to your book, or you?
KilltheelevatorSpeech.com links to a page that talks about the book and has a free, like I said, the free chapter, and there's a little bit of other free stuff on there. If they want to learn more about me and read my blog and that kind of thing, that's FeliciaSlattery.com.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate our time. This was highly entertaining. This has been great. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.